Given that my channel here is mostly about my obsession with King Kong, it was only a matter of time before I got around to a top 5s video about it. But for this one, I wanted to do something different. I could do a video of my top 5 versions of the monster, but there's only about 5 different versions of Kong anyway, and where's the fun in that? As I have said many, many times, I like Kong as a representation of the media he's in, more than because I have any particular affinity for giant apes. So this time around, I'm going to do a top 5 video of things that Kong is in. What versions of King Kong media do I like? What versions of the story? And some of the things on this list may be a little surprising, because it's not just movies and TV shows. Number 5. The King Kong Show. The 1966 Rankin Bass animated series is a pretty fun little show that has really grown on me. The 60s were a strange time for cartoons. Saturday morning was starting to become a thing, and entertainment companies responded by grabbing whatever franchises they could and transforming them into whatever weird thing their feverish brains could come up with. There's actually a science fiction Lone Ranger cartoon from 1966 that is off the wall nuts, owing more to Wild Wild West than to the live action show a decade before, or the radio show a decade before that. My favorite episode is the one where a literal hook-handed, peg-legged pirate is scuttling riverboats on the Mississippi with his Nautilus-style submarine. King Kong was another franchise turned into a crazy animated series with a cool pop art style, despite its technical limitations. It was also the first American series to be outsourced to Japan, with the animation picked up by Toei Studios. In this series, we get an alternate fantasy of King Kong, where instead of great white hunter types, Kong is discovered by a family of research scientists and become friends with the young boy. A stand-in for every kid reading Famous Monsters of Filmland, who just wanted to be Kong's buddy. Together, they go on adventures across Mondo Island, the series stand-in for Skull Island, and across the world. In one episode, they just happen to be passing through Egypt when they meet up with their arch-nemesis Doctor Who has mechanized the Sphinx and is using him to disrupt shipping on the Suez Canal. And then there's the episode with the underground civilization that lives beneath Mondo Island, and the one with the killer bees, and another with the saber-toothed cats. It's pretty wild, and pretty fun. Number 4. King Kong's Thronester. I said these wouldn't all be movies or TV shows, and here we are, with one of the most perfect instantiations of Kong's status in mid-century monster kitsch. Aurora Plastics Corporation breathed new life into their line of plastic models by making kits of the undead, namely Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Bride of Frankenstein, and others, eventually including Godzilla and King Kong. I've done a whole video on them, so check it out. The problem with any collectible is that eventually, everyone who wants one has one, and the people who want them start to age out. So Aurora met this crisis head-on with a series of kits that reimagined the monsters as hot-rodding cool ghouls. Dracula's dragster, Frankenstein's flivver, Wolfman's wagon, Mummy's chariot, Godzilla's go-kart, and King Kong's Thronester. These monster hot rods are such a cool artifact of their era that I can't help but love them. And I did get Polar Light's reissue of the Thronester, to which I made my own adjustments. I was very tempted to just replicate the beautiful James Bama box art, and would love to get a poster of it someday, somehow. But the fun of a model kit is that you can customize it. So I added a few elements, like a mounted Styracosaurus head, the HO scale women on his dashboard, which makes me laugh, a plane in hot pursuit, and some extra tikis to really bring out the mid-century kitsch vibe. Number 3. King Kong by Tarantella Ghoul. While a cartoon and an Aurora model kit are nothing to sneeze at, you haven't really made it in the field of mid-century monster kitsch until you get a bopping song. The birth of rock and roll in the 50s brought with it a trend in novelty songs. One could even define the whole dance craze genre as a novelty genre, exemplified by the most popular dance craze song ever, Chubby Checker's The Twist. 2 years after The Twist's 1960 release came Bobby Pickett, an erstwhile actor who stumbled upon a novelty song sensation with his Boris Karloff impression. The Monster Mash touched off an entire novelty genre of horror rock, as well as begetting a very funny album of its own that I should really do a video about someday. Eventually, everyone and their dog were making horror songs. But before Bobby Boris Pickett was Tarantella Ghoul, a TV horror host who picked up the mantle from Vampira in 1957. In 1958, she and her backup band, the Gravediggers, released the single King Kong, with a B-side called Graveyard Rock. Unfortunately, by 1959 she fell victim to the mores of her time. It was discovered that she was pregnant out of wedlock, and her show was cancelled. The song, King Kong, is a great, jazzy little number with a nice beat that plays well into the idea of King Kong being a ladies' man. Now don't get me wrong, I think it's actively creepy to see these modern versions that try to play up some kind of reciprocal sexual or romantic relationship between Kong and Anne, or modern academic analysis which takes this kind of bestiality as a given and uses it as a springboard for interpretations of racism. King Kong is a giant ape, and Anne is terrified of being captured by him. But, in the derived context of 1960s monster kitsch, Kong as a ladies' man is a funny diminution of the horror of it, like so many plastic vampire teeth and candies emblazoned with Frankenstein's monster. Number 2. King Kong Escapes. I covered this in more depth in my video on Japanese King Kong. Geez, it's like my top 5s are just becoming compilations from prior videos. But yes, King Kong Escapes is my favorite King Kong movie after the original, and my favorite of the 2 extant Japanese Kong films. It's a nice little live-action adaptation of the Rankin Bass cartoon that embodies everything great and fun about the Toho Showa-era kaiju films. Giant monsters, mad scientists, robot doppelgangers, groovy 60s style, and sleek mid-century sci-fi inventions. Which brings us around to nobody's surprise. Number 1, the original King Kong. Gee, do you think one of my favorite movies of all time, of any genre, would be my favorite King Kong movie? Maybe? Again, please refer to the entire video I made on what makes this movie so great. I want to fudge this number a bit by also including Son of Kong and the original King Kong novelization in it, though. The reason I want to fudge it is that neither of those pieces stand alone as a film and a book in their own right. Son of Kong is a fine little movie for the most part, at least until the left turn in the final act, because they apparently couldn't think of how to end it properly. But as a little film, it doesn't stand up on its own strength. It's a fine little epilogue to the original film. You have a grand, epic-scale movie in the original King Kong, but it's left with a few dangling questions. Namely, what happens to Carl Denham? He's responsible for this whole mess. So what happens after his famous quote and the credits roll? Son of Kong answers that. And that's really what the movie is about. Kong is dead, Anne and Jack get married, so what about Denham? What's going to be the end of his story? The 1932 novelization by Delos Lovelace gives us an early version of the story with a few tweaks, and neither does it stand alone, thanks to Lovelace's limitations as a writer. It's not a great work of literature by any means. Lovelace's lack of descriptive prowess leaves a lot to images from the film to fill the mental gap. But what the novelization does do really well is give us time in the world of Skull Island. The movie rushes along at a fair clip, which is good for a movie. But if you want to slow down and spend more time on Skull Island, exploring its jungles and dinosaurs, then you have to go to the novel. Because Lovelace lacks descriptive prowess, the book is filled with more incident, and the slow pace of reading compared to watching a movie lets you steep for longer in that world. King Kong is a darn near perfect movie, and you don't need the novelization or Son of Kong to appreciate or complete it. But they do provide a way to spend more time in that movie, in that world, with those characters, without degrading the original movie itself by remaking it. And there we have it, my top 5 favorite King Kong media. I'm not too sure what there is left to do a top 5 of, but I have something new in mind for a list video, so stay tuned for that.